Ice blue eyes, his exact shade, staring up at him from the face of a 6-year-old girl he had never met. Corbin Aldridge, billionaire, CEO, a man whose signature sat at the bottom of permits worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. Could not breathe. The girl wasn't alone. Next to her, a boy. Same curly hair, same impossible blue eyes, wiping tears off his face with his sleeve. Tears Corbin had just caused. It was like staring into a genetic mirror, his own features refracted through faces he had never seen. 30 seconds ago, that boy whispered his dream out loud, and Corbin laughed at it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the name rising in his chest. A name he buried 6 years ago under a check, and 2 words, handle it. Have you ever looked into a stranger's face and seen yourself staring back? That's what happened to Corbin Aldridge on a Tuesday afternoon in a classroom that smelled like crayons and hand sanitizer on a day he thought would be nothing more than a photo opportunity. A powerful man crushed a child's dream, and that child might be his own son. How did a billionaire end up face to face with 2 children he didn't know existed? Stay with me. Before we go any further, I want to know who's sitting by the fire with me tonight. Welcome to the hearth, friends. Whether this is your first time or you've been here since the very beginning, I'm glad you're here. Are you listening from down south? Out west? Across the water? Drop your location in the comments. I love seeing how far our hearth family reaches. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell, because this one is going to stay with you long after it's over. Now let me take you back. 2 hours before that classroom. 2 hours before every certainty in Corbin Aldridge's life split clean down the center. At 34, Corbin ran Aldridge Development the way his mother taught him to run everything, with precision, distance, and control. His penthouse had no photographs on the walls. The leather smelled expensive and untouched like a showroom floor because that's exactly what it was. Nobody lived there. Somebody slept there, signed documents there, dressed in the mornings. But living requires warmth, and warmth had been designed out of Corbin's world a long time ago. He was engaged to Felicity Greer, polished, strategic, beautiful the way magazine covers are beautiful, which is to say perfect from a distance and oddly flat up close. Wedding months away. Everything on schedule, everything on brand. This career day visit hadn't even been his idea. His publicist arranged it. Soft image coverage to offset negative press about displaced families and demolished storefronts. Corbin's developments were filed under project codes and zoning numbers. He signed off on Phase 7 West or Parcel 22B. He never saw street names, never saw the people behind the addresses. Today was simple, 36-year-olds in a classroom. A quick talk, a handshake, done. If you've ever watched someone perform success while falling apart inside, drop a heart in the comments. You'll understand Corbin before this story is over. That morning, Felicity sat across from him at the breakfast table. Silk voice, one hand on his arm, with a touch that wasn't affection so much as ownership. Delia, her personal assistant, stood near the doorway with a tablet pressed to her chest. Delia was the kind of person who survived powerful people by becoming invisible, anticipating needs before they were spoken, absorbing moods without reacting. Felicity demanded exactly that. When Delia offered a small scheduling note, a time conflict with Saturday's venue walkthrough, Felicity didn't even look up. When I want your opinion on my schedule, I'll ask for it. Until then, stand there and be useful. The words landed like a slap. Delia's face flushed. She nodded once and went silent. Corbin barely registered it. Phone in hand, scrolling through emails, absorbing none of them. He missed it the way he missed most things that mattered, because his attention was always somewhere it didn't need to be. Felicity turned back to him and adjusted the collar of his jacket with 2 fingers. Children love you, darling. It'll photograph beautifully. She sent him off the way a general sends a soldier toward a position she's already scouted, with confidence, because she already knew the terrain. She knew exactly what was waiting for him at that school. Felicity smiled, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes, or the file she kept locked in her desk drawer. 2 hours later, Corbin walked into a modest brick building where construction paper lined the hallways, and the air tasted like glue sticks and cheap soap. Everything here was the opposite of his world. Warm, worn, alive. The classroom was small. 36-year-olds sat cross-legged on a rug or squeezed behind low tables, looking up at him with the particular blankness of children who have not yet learned to be impressed by expensive suits. He gave his talk. Polished, rehearsed, skyscrapers, success, vision. He used the same cadence he used in boardrooms, and it landed the same way a foreign language lands. The children understood the sounds, but not the meaning. They were polite but unmoved, because 6-year-olds are the only honest audience left on earth, and nothing about Corbin's presentation made any of them want to be him. When he finished, the teacher invited the students to share their own dreams, and for a few minutes the room filled with the usual chorus. Astronaut, veterinarian, firefighter. Corbin nodded along, already thinking about his next meeting. Then the teacher called a name, and every clock in Corbin's life started running backward. A boy stood up near the back. Small for his age, curly hair falling across his forehead. He held a worn sketchbook pressed to his chest like armor, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to bake cakes." The room waited. Corbin chuckled. Too sharp, too loud, a sound that belonged in a conference room, not here. "Baking is a hobby, son, not a career." His hands went to his cufflinks, left, then right. He said something about needing a bigger dream than frosting, and even as the words left his mouth, the air changed. The teacher's smile froze. The other children went still, and the boy, Oren, sat down slowly, his face crumbling in that devastating way children's faces crumble when they realize for the first time that adults can be cruel on purpose. Before the silence could settle, a girl shot to her feet. Same curly hair, arms crossed hard against her chest, a gesture borrowed from someone older. Her voice carried the way her brothers couldn't, filling every corner of the room. "My brother makes the best cakes on our whole block, and my mama owns a real bakery. That's a real career." Corbin opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because he wasn't looking at her defiance or the fury in her small, clenched jaw. He was looking at her eyes, ice blue, his exact shade. Then he looked at the boy. Same impossible blue. His eyes. In two children he had never seen before. A name surfaced from somewhere he had spent 6 years trying to seal shut. Yara. The rest of career day dissolved into noise. What he would remember was the corridor wall, his palm flat against the painted cinder block, his breathing wrong, his fingers reaching for his cufflinks again, because the ritual was the only thing keeping him upright. He pulled out his phone. His private investigator. Typed 2 words. Yara Sinclair. Deleted them. Typed the name again. Sent it. He sent the message. Then stared at the screen, waiting for an answer he wasn't sure he wanted. Outside the school, a black car idled at the curb. Tinted windows. Felicity watched Corbin push through the front doors, one hand gripping the railing, his composure visibly fractured. She could see the crack from 50 feet away, the fracture she had engineered. Her phone buzzed. Her attorney. "Is everything in place?" "The demolition order is confirmed. 30 days, the entire block. And flower and fortitude. Center of the zone. Her lease means nothing once the permit's clear." Felicity smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Perfect. Let him find out on his own, after Saturday." Through the windshield, half a mile south, a hand-painted bakery sign caught the afternoon light. Gold letters on deep green. In 30 days, it would be rubble. And the man who signed the demolition order, filed under a project code he never connected to a street address, didn't even know it existed. If your heart just broke for Oren in that classroom, hit the like button right now. Not later. Right now. Let's show that boy his dream matters. And if you want to see what happens when Corbin finds out the truth about those children, subscribe and hit the bell, because the past is about to come back hard. I read every single comment, so tell me, do you think a man like Corbin deserves a second chance? Let me know. 6 years before career day, Corbin Aldridge sat across a conference table from the only woman who ever made him feel like a person instead of a building, and he handed her a check to disappear. She took the check. She walked out, and she never cashed it. This is where you find out who Yara Sinclair really is, and I need you to pay close attention because everything that happens next depends on what happened in that conference room. Welcome back to the Hearth, friends. If you're just joining us, go watch the first part. Trust me, you'll want the full picture. Everyone else, I see you. Drop where you're listening from tonight. Now, let's go back 6 years. Yara Sinclair's title was Executive Assistant to the CEO of Aldridge Development. The title never captured what she was. She ran Corbin's world. She knew his coffee order not as a fixed preference, but as a diagnostic tool. 2 sugars on bad days, black on good ones. She noticed the difference before he did. She noticed everything. The way his voice thinned when he was about to lose his patience. The way he pressed his thumb against his pen when a meeting was going poorly. The way he adjusted his cufflinks before entering a room, as though snapping armor into place. She noticed, said nothing, and kept his world running with a competence so seamless that most people assumed the machine ran itself. The shift didn't happen all at once. A look held 1 second too long across the boardroom. Fingers brushing when she handed him a file, neither pulling away fast enough. Then came the night. Shareholder meeting prep. The building emptied out floor by floor, takeout containers on the office carpet at midnight because neither of them wanted to sit at the conference table. They laughed about nothing that mattered. A typo in a quarterly report, an investor who mispronounced his own fund's name. And somewhere in the laughing, the walls came down. He told her real things. About his mother, Vivian. The house that looked beautiful from outside, but felt like a display case inside. About the boy he used to be, the one who wanted to build things that made people feel something, not just things that made money. He said it like a confession, and she received it like one. She wasn't performing attention. She was actually listening. And when he finished, she looked at him with something he had never seen directed at him before. Not admiration, not strategy. Something closer to recognition. And said, "You still want that." Not a question, a statement. As if she could see the version of him that everyone else, including himself, had given up on. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. Have you ever seen the real version of someone? The one they hide from everyone else? Type, "I see you" in the comments. Late nights became dinners. Dinners became something that lived outside office walls, in small restaurants where nobody recognized Corbin's name and nobody cared. She smelled like vanilla and butter. Warm, clinging to her skin long after she'd left the kitchen. His world smelled like leather and cold glass. When she laughed, it loosened something in his chest he didn't know had been clenched tight. He loved her. He knew it the way you know the weather has changed. Not because someone told you, but because the air feels different on your skin. He loved her, and he never said it. Not once. She laughed, and something rearranged in his chest. He should have told her right then. He didn't. And that silence would cost him everything. The conference room. Not the office floor where they sat with takeout and told each other the truth. The formal room. Long table, leather chairs, glass walls. Yara chose that room deliberately, and the choice told him everything before she opened her mouth. She sat across from him, not beside him. Hands folded, back straight, and she told him. Corbin heard his mother's voice before he heard his own heartbeat. Vivian's voice, the one installed in him like software since childhood. Image first, legacy first, control first. His hands went to his cufflinks. Left, then right, armor on. He opened the desk drawer, pulled out a checkbook he kept for problems that needed to be solved quietly. He wrote the check. Enough zeros to buy silence, distance, disappearance. He slid it across the table without looking at the person on the other side. 2 words. Handle it. Yara looked at the check, then she looked at him. Something closed in her eyes. Not anger, though she had every right. Something quieter and more permanent. Clarity, the man she loved, the real one, the one on the office floor, was not the man sitting across this conference table. Or maybe he was, and the man on the floor had been the performance all along. She took the check. She stood. She walked out without a word. By that afternoon, HR processed her termination. Building access revoked. Her nameplate removed from the 34th floor. Every trace of Yara Sinclair erased from the company directory as though she had never existed. She never cashed the check. The first apartment was a studio so small she could touch both walls with her arms stretched wide. She sat in a clinic waiting room, and when the doctor told her, she nodded once and asked the only question that mattered. Are they healthy? The doctor said the word that changed everything. They. Two, not one. She sat in the clinic parking lot afterward, hands on the steering wheel, and let herself feel the weight of it. Then she dried her eyes, started the engine, and drove to the grocery store, because there were always things to do. Oren arrived first, quiet, blue-eyed, blinking at the world like he wasn't sure it deserved his full attention. Maren came 4 minutes later, louder, already demanding space. The early years were brutal. 3 jobs, sleep in fragments, eating standing up over the kitchen counter, living on stubbornness and the refusal to prove Corbin right. Cashing that check would mean he was right. It would mean she was a problem, and his money was the solution. She would rather go hungry than let that be the story. The night she started baking, the twins were 14 months old and had finally fallen asleep at the same time. She found a cookbook at the thrift store, spine cracked, pages stained with someone else's kitchen history. She borrowed a cake pan from a neighbor. At 2 in the morning, standing in a kitchen the size of a closet, she made a vanilla cake from scratch. The smell, warm sugar, butter, vanilla, was the first thing that had felt like home since she walked out of that conference room. Survival became skill. Skill became calling. She sold cakes to neighbors, then to the church, then at a weekend farmer's market where her table was always first to sell out. 3 years ago. 3 years after leaving Corbin, she signed a lease on a small storefront on a block that was tired but alive. She painted the sign herself, gold letters on deep green, flower and fortitude. She found a second-hand display case at an estate sale and polished it until it gleamed. She built something real, from nothing, with no one's help. Every morning she unlocked that door, she proved the check had been wrong. She didn't know that 3 miles away, a man she'd never met had already drawn a red line through her address. If you respect a woman who took nothing and built everything, show some love in the comments. Tell Yara what she deserves to hear. Oren grew into a quiet child who drew in his sketchbook at the bakery's corner table every afternoon. Not random drawings, cakes, layer cakes with detailed frosting patterns, fondant flowers shaded in colored pencil with a precision that startled anyone who looked closely. He held the sketchbook the way he held everything. Close, guarded, like the world might try to take it. The back pages were different, hidden. Drawings of a man's face. Sharp features, strong jaw, no color in the eyes. Empty circles where the blue should be. He never showed anyone those pages. Maren was a wall. Arms crossed, chin up, questions that made adults uncomfortable. She positioned herself between Oren and anything she didn't trust, which was most things. When a customer once spoke too sharply to her mother, Maren stood up and stared at the woman without blinking until the woman looked away first. 6 years old, and she already understood that protection was not a feeling but a practice. When the twins asked about their father, Yara gave them the only answer that was both simple and true. He wasn't ready to be what you needed. Night after career day. Corbin stood at the penthouse window, city lights spread below him, and for the first time he looked at the grid not as a portfolio, but as a place where people lived. His phone buzzed. The investigator. 1 attachment. A photograph. Flower and fortitude. Gold letters on deep green, hand-painted. Beneath the photo, an address. He read the street name. It meant nothing at first. Then he walked to his office, pulled up the project files, and cross-referenced the address against the active demolition zones. The project code matched. Parcel 14C, the Aldridge waterfront expansion, Phase 2. His signature on every approval page, dated 3 months ago. 30 days. The bakery, the sign she painted by hand, the kitchen where his children grew up. He signed the demolition order under a zoning number. He never saw the street. He never saw the name. He signed the order to destroy everything Yara Sinclair built from the wreckage he left behind, and he did not know it existed until this moment. This woman built a bakery from nothing. She raised 2 children alone. She never took a cent of his money. And now the man who abandoned her is about to destroy everything she built, with his own signature. If that doesn't move you, I don't know what will. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear a story like this tonight. And if you're not subscribed yet, come on, friend. You don't want to miss what happens when Corbin walks through that bakery door. Drop your prediction. What do you think Yara's going to say to him? He had demolished city blocks, leveled neighborhoods with a signature, but standing across the street from a bakery with a hand-painted sign, Corbin Aldridge could not make his legs move. Welcome back, Hearth family. We left off with Corbin staring at a demolition order with his own signature on it, aimed at the bakery his children grew up in. Now he's standing across the street from it. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop it below. I see every comment. Let's go. Corbin sat at his home office desk with the demolition plans spread in front of him. He already knew the address, the project code, the match. He'd confirmed it hours ago. But knowing and seeing are different things. Now he was staring at the full demolition package, not as project codes, but as a physical map of actual streets where actual people lived. Flower and Fortitude sat dead center, not at the edge where it might be spared through a boundary adjustment. Center, the anchor point around which the entire Phase 2 footprint had been drawn. He pulled up old HR records, files he hadn't touched in 6 years. Yara's termination paperwork, clean, efficient, 2 pages. Reason for separation, position eliminated. His own signature sat at the bottom of everything. The HR form, the termination, and 3 months ago, the demolition order. He pushed back from the desk, walked to the window, and pressed his forehead against the glass. For once, he didn't see opportunity. He saw addresses. The next morning, he crossed the street. No driver, no publicist, no prepared remarks. Just Corbin, in a suit that cost more than the bakery's monthly rent, standing on a cracked sidewalk. The bell above the door rang, a small, bright sound that startled him because everything about this place was so far removed from his world that even a door chime felt foreign. The warmth hit him immediately, baked into the walls, into the wood, into every surface. He hadn't smelled it since the day she walked out of the conference room. The interior was modest and precise, display case gleaming under the morning sun. Pastries lined up behind the glass like small works of art. A chalkboard menu in handwriting he recognized instantly. Yara's hand, steady, clear, unhurried. But it was the photo behind the counter, half hidden by a flour canister, that stopped him cold. Both twins, age 4, those blue eyes staring out from the frame. His color, unmistakable. In a photograph he was never supposed to see. Yara emerged through the pass-through kitchen window, hands dusted with flour, apron tied tight. She saw him and stopped, not with surprise, but with the stillness of someone who had imagined this moment and decided long ago exactly how it would go. She set the tray down, wiped her hands on her apron, walked forward until only the display case stood between them. Her voice was steady. No tremor, no performance. You're not welcome here. Yara's strength is quiet, and it is absolute. Type Fortitude in the comments if you feel that. Corbin stumbled through something that was not an apology. He mentioned the school, the children, their eyes. He talked the way he talked in boardrooms, circling the point, layering context. Yara cut him off. Surgical. You don't get to show up 6 years late and call it concern. You wrote a check. You told me to handle it. I handled it without you. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. The distinction landed like a blade. She was right. He hadn't been kept in the dark. He had chosen the dark, paid for it, locked the door and lived for 6 years in a penthouse with no photographs, telling himself that what he couldn't see couldn't be his responsibility. She told him the children were fine, healthy, loved. She delivered these facts the way she used to deliver briefing notes. Concise, complete, no room for follow-up. He asked if he could see them. The air shifted. Yara's jaw tightened. You saw Oren yesterday. You laughed at his dream. That was the first thing their father ever gave them, the sound of being mocked. She paused. So no, you don't get to see them. Then Yara turned, reached beneath the register, pulled out a folded piece of paper. There's one more thing you should see, Corbin, and you're not going to like it. She unfolded it. A community demolition flyer, bold print, proposed development, Aldridge waterfront expansion. Her block, her address, her bakery, and in the lower corner, his name, his face. I've known for 3 weeks that someone named Aldridge is coming for my block. Her eyes held his. Not afraid. I just didn't know it was you. Corbin looked at his own name on the flyer. The polished headshot, confident, controlled, staring back at him from a piece of paper that announced the destruction of everything she had built. So, did you come here to warn me, to apologize, or did you come here to see what you're about to destroy? Again, no answer. She told him to leave. He did. Corbin returned to the penthouse. Felicity was on the sofa, tablet in hand, performing relaxation with precision and awareness of the frame. She asked where he'd been. He said he went for a drive. She accepted the answer the way a chess player accepts a weak opening, noting it, filing it, already 3 moves ahead. Then she mentioned the school, voice casual. Your publicist said the career day photos turned out well. The mention tightened his jaw. A small reaction. But Felicity was built for small reactions. After Corbin left the room, she picked up her phone, texted her attorney. He went to the bakery. Move up the timeline. Now. Alone in his office, Corbin pulled every property, every address, every tenant notification. He called his head of development, asked about halting demolition on a single block. The answer was flat: permits filed, contractors under binding agreement, council approval secured. Pulling out triggers, breach of contract penalties, millions. He hung up and stared at the file. He built this machine. Every gear, every lever, designed to move forward without hesitation. Now it was aimed at the only real thing he'd ever been connected to. And the machine did not have a reverse. That evening, in Felicity's private East Wing office, Delia delivered a file. A background report compiled by Felicity's attorney, Yara's financials, bakery lease terms, the twins' school enrollment, their teacher's name, their pickup schedule. Delia stood by the door, watching. Miss Greer, is there anything else? Felicity didn't look up. Get me Vivian Aldridge's private number. Delia's face flickered. Ma'am? Did I stutter? Delia retrieved the number. Felicity dialed. 2 rings. Vivian, it's Felicity. I think there's something you need to know about your son. She just called the mother. If you think the walls are about to close in, smash that like button. Because the web just got tight. Vivian Aldridge did not raise a son. She engineered one. Every school, every handshake, every relationship. Curated. Every rough edge filed smooth. Every inconvenient emotion sealed behind good posture and better tailoring. She built Corbin the way her late husband built buildings. With blueprints, with intention, with absolute intolerance for deviation from the plan. And now, over a phone call she didn't expect, she had just learned that her masterpiece had a crack. 2 cracks, actually, 6 years old, with her son's blue eyes. Hearth family, we're back. Right at the moment, Felicity picked up the phone and called Corbin's mother. The walls are closing in. Drop where you're watching from. I see every single one. If you haven't liked yet, now's the time. Let's go. Vivian processed the information the way she processed everything, not with shock, but with calculation. 2 children, a former assistant, outside the bloodline she had so carefully protected. Her concern was not emotional. She did not ask whether the children were healthy, happy, or had enough. She asked 3 questions. How long has this been public? Who else knows? Can it be contained? Felicity answered each one with the composure of a woman delivering a quarterly earnings report. Vivian extracted the data, discarded the sentiment, and moved immediately to strategy. She called Corbin within the hour. Controlled fury wrapped in composure, Vivian's native language. She told him she knew. She did not say how. Corbin heard that particular tone, the one that lived between disappointment and instruction, and understood immediately. Felicity had told her, which meant Felicity had known before career day, before he laughed at a boy's dream, before he looked into 2 pairs of blue eyes and felt the ground shift. Felicity held this information like a card, waiting for the precise moment to play it, not to help him, but to corner him. Vivian's directive was clean and final. You will fix this quietly, no acknowledgement, no contact, and the wedding stays on schedule. For his entire life, Corbin had responded to that voice with compliance, automatic, the same reflex as the cufflinks. But this time, he hesitated. The word yes sat on his tongue and didn't move. He didn't say no, but the silence lasted 3 seconds longer than it ever had before, and Vivian heard every one of them. Vivian hung up. Then she opened her contacts and scrolled to a name she hadn't used in years. One that predated Corbin, predated the company, predated everything. Corbin went to Felicity. He did not wait. He walked into the living room, where she sat reviewing seating charts, and said it without preamble. You knew about them. You knew before you sent me to that school. Felicity set the seating chart down. She did not deny it. Denial would have been clumsy, and Felicity was never clumsy. She reframed, pivoting from accuse to protector in a single sentence. I found out months ago. I could have left you. I could have gone to the press. Instead, I protected you. I kept it quiet. Polished. Rehearsed. But what Corbin understood now was that Felicity hadn't stumbled onto the truth by accident. The moment she accepted his engagement ring, she hired her attorney to run a full background excavation. Every sealed file, every HR record, every name Corbin tried to bury. She wasn't building a marriage. She was building collateral. The twins weren't a surprise, she discovered. They were leverage she collected. And career day, the specific school, the specific classroom, was a detonation, timed and placed with precision, designed to shatter him in a controlled environment where Felicity could manage the fallout. She positioned herself as the loyal partner managing his mess, called the demolition a blessing, voice smooth, reasonable. Once the bakery is gone, she'll relocate, she'll disappear again, and we can move on. Corbin heard disappear, and something shifted inside him, slow and irreversible. He had heard himself say that word before. 6 years ago. Conference room. Check across the table. Handle it. He wanted Yara to disappear then, and she did. Built a life he never saw. Raised children he never held. And now Felicity was using the same language, the same cold arithmetic that treated human beings as problems to be erased. He didn't explode. He went quiet. For Corbin Aldridge, quiet was more dangerous than any raised voice. Quiet meant the machine was recalculating. Felicity misread the silence as compliance. She had spent their entire relationship reading his silence as agreement. Because it always had been. She moved to wedding details. Saturday's walkthrough. The florist. The photographer. She spoke about their future with the confidence of someone who believed she had already built it. Felicity thinks she's winning. Do you? Tell me in the comments. Is she in control, or is she about to lose it all? The next morning, Corbin met with his legal team. 3 attorneys, demolition files stacked between them. Could the Aldridge waterfront expansion be halted on a single block? The answers came back immovable. City permits approved. Contractors bound with penalty clauses. investor commitments tied to projected returns on the full expansion footprint. Pulling one block out risked tens of millions. One attorney mentioned a heritage review clause. Businesses operating above a certain number of years could trigger a review that paused demolition. But the clause required a decade of continuous operation. Flower and Fortitude had only been open 3 years. 3 years since Yara signed that lease. 3 years after leaving Corbin. 7 years too young to be protected by the very system designed to protect places exactly like it. Another option, buy out the lease. Relocate the bakery. But that required Yara's cooperation. Her willingness to sit across a table from Corbin and negotiate. She told him to leave 2 days ago. She told him he wasn't welcome. The legal path forward required the one thing he had never done. Ask for help from someone he had wronged, without leverage, without the safety of a checkbook. As an equal, that afternoon, Delia stood at Felicity's desk in the East Wing. Filing, organizing, the work she'd done for 3 years. Invisible, efficient, silent. Felicity was out. The office empty. Delia reached for a stack of folders and found one she hadn't seen before, unmarked except for the attorney's name in the lower corner. She opened it. Surveillance reports on Yara Sinclair. Photographs of the bakery, time-stamped over months. Photographs of the twins at their school. Arriving, leaving. Dated months before career day. A correspondence chain detailing the identification of the school, enrollment records, pickup schedule, and a handwritten note on the attorney's letterhead. Make sure the career day invitation goes to Aldridge Development. Suggest the specific school. This was not protection. This was a campaign. Months of surveillance aimed at one woman and 2 children who had never asked for anything from anyone. She closed the folder, put it back, then footsteps in the hallway. Felicity's voice, getting closer. Delia moved automatically, straightening the desk, stepping back to her usual position. Felicity entered, phone to her ear, barely glancing at Delia. A nod. Continue working. Delia nodded back, face neutral. But inside her planner, pinned to the front cover, was a photograph of her younger sister. Gap-toothed, grinning, roughly the same age as those twins. Delia didn't act. Not yet. But the decision had taken root. Saturday. The wedding walkthrough. A grand estate outside the city. Manicured grounds, stone archways, the kind of venue that existed primarily to make guests feel insignificant compared to the occasion. Felicity moved through the space like she owned it, directing florists, adjusting lighting, narrating seating arrangements like a field commander. The flowers were white and sterile. Beautiful the way Felicity was beautiful. The seating chart read like a power grid, each table calibrated by influence and net worth. The unwritten vows felt less like promises and more like contract terms. Corbin walked through the motions, stood where they told him, nodded when they asked, but everything looked wrong. The flowers had no warmth. The venue felt exactly like the display case his mother built for him to live inside. Vivian arrived midway through, pulled Corbin aside beneath a stone archway, reinforced the plan. The wedding happens. The twins stay invisible. The image holds. She spoke about legacy, sacrifice, everything she'd given him. The same words he'd heard for 34 years. But standing in that venue, surrounded by flowers that smelled like nothing, he heard something else. A voice from 6 years ago, sitting on an office floor at midnight. You still want that? Yara's voice. Not a question. The truest thing anyone had ever said to him. That evening, the walkthrough finished, Corbin sat alone in the venue parking lot. Engine off, windows down. His phone buzzed. An email from his development team. Subject line, revised timeline. Aldridge Waterfront Phase 2. He opened it. Read it twice. Demolition moved up. Not 30 days. 15. He checked the authorization chain. The acceleration was requested through a clause about safety concerns. Structural assessments flagging buildings for expedited clearance. Filed by Felicity's attorney. The same attorney whose name sat on the surveillance folder. The same attorney who arranged career day. Felicity didn't just know about the demolition. She moved the deadline. 15 days. Flour and Fortitude had 15 days. Across town, Yara locked the bakery door beneath the gold letters. She walked to her car where the twins waited. Oren with his sketchbook, Maren watching through the window with eyes that matched a man they had never been allowed to know. She didn't know the countdown had just been cut in half. She didn't know the woman sleeping next to their father was the one holding the blade. 15 days. And the woman sleeping next to Corbin is the one who cut the clock in half. If you need to see what happens next, and I know you do, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell. Share this with someone who believes people can change. And tell me in the comments, can Corbin save the bakery and earn Yara's trust? Or does he have to choose? 15 days. That's how long Yara Sinclair had before everything she built would be reduced to dust. She knew the demolition was coming. She'd known for weeks. What she didn't know was that the clock had just been cut in half. But someone else did. And for the first time in his life, Corbin Aldridge was about to do something that couldn't be fixed with a signature or a check. He was about to tell the truth to someone who had every reason not to believe him. We're in it now, Hearth family. We left off with Corbin sitting in a parking lot, staring at an email that moved his own demolition up to 15 days, filed by the woman lying next to him every night. Drop your location. I love seeing the map light up. If this story's got you feeling something, hit that like. Let's keep going. Morning. No suit jacket. Sleeves rolled to his elbows, which, on Corbin Aldridge, was the equivalent of showing up naked. He hadn't slept. The ashy taste of cold coffee sat on his tongue. His eyes burned, the stinging, gritty exhaustion of a man who stared at a ceiling for 7 hours while the countdown ran behind his eyelids. 15 days. He drove to the bakery himself, no driver, no tinted windows, and parked across the street in the same spot where Felicity's car had idled outside the school 5 days ago. The symmetry made him sick. Yara saw him through the front window before he reached the door. Her face hardened, the same expression from the counter. But this time, he didn't wait for her verdict. He crossed the street, stood on the sidewalk, and when she came to the door with her jaw already set, he spoke first. Your bakery is in a demolition zone. My company filed the permits. I signed them 3 months ago. I didn't know this place existed when I did it. Yara didn't blink. She held his gaze the way she held everything. Steady, measured. He kept going, because stopping meant she would close the door, and this time it would not open again. The timeline has been moved up. You have 15 days. She processed it. Not with panic. Yara Sinclair did not panic. Had not panicked in a clinic parking lot with 2 heartbeats and no plan. Had not panicked through 3 jobs and no sleep. What crossed her face was colder than panic. Recognition. Powerful people, deciding what belonged to her and when it would be taken away. So you came here to warn me, or to ease your conscience? Both. The honesty surprised her. She studied his face, searching for the performance, the angle. She was looking for the version of Corbin who slid a check across a conference table without meeting her eyes. She was not sure whether the man on her sidewalk with rolled sleeves and stinging eyes was someone different, or simply someone better rehearsed. Can you stop it? She was not asking about permits or zoning boards. She was asking whether he was willing to dismantle the machine he built with his own hands, the machine that made him wealthy, powerful, and controllable, in order to protect something he had no legal claim to. The bakery was the anchor point of the entire Phase 2 footprint. Pulling it out wouldn't just halt 1 block. It would crack the foundation of the whole expansion. I don't know yet, but I'm going to try. She nodded. Once, not trust, not forgiveness. Acknowledgement that for the first time in 6 years, he showed up with truth instead of a check. She didn't invite him in. She didn't close the door. She stood in the threshold, and she let the silence between them hold a possibility that hadn't existed 5 minutes ago. He told her the truth. First real thing he's given her in 6 years. If you believe the truth matters more than money, type truth in the comments. From the bakery, Corbin drove to his mother's house, the one where he grew up, beautiful from outside, every surface communicating wealth and control and the absence of anything unplanned. The door opened before he knocked, because Vivian always knew when someone was approaching. He told her he was stopping the demolition. Plain, undecorated. Vivian received the words with a stillness that preceded calculation. Then the calculation finished, and what emerged was controlled anger in a voice so composed it could have been reading stock prices. Halting a project of this scale risked the brand, the investors, the timeline she had engineered for his career, his marriage, his public image. Everything she built depended on the machine continuing to operate exactly as designed. She leveraged guilt with precision, every sacrifice, every connection. Every door she opened before he was old enough to turn the handle. She laid it out as a ledger, a running account of debts he owed. Corbin listened, let her finish. Then he said something he had never said to her. "You built a life for me, but you never asked me if I wanted to live in it." Silence. Vivian stared at her son the way an engineer stares at a load-bearing wall showing cracks. No one had spoken back to her. Not Corbin. Not anyone. She built him to be controllable, and the machine was refusing commands. Her warning was quiet and absolute. "If you do this, you do it alone. I will not protect you from the consequences." Corbin walked out. He did not look back. He didn't see her reach for her phone. He didn't hear the name she said when the line picked up. That same afternoon, Delia sat at Felicity's desk. Penthouse empty, wedding files spread across the surface. But today, her hands moved slower. Today, she opened the surveillance folder fully. She had seen it before. Glimpsed it, closed it, put it back. Today, she read every page. The attorney's correspondence detailing fabricated safety concerns. The email chain identifying the twins' school, their enrollment, their classroom. And the note, handwritten, the ink confident. "Make sure the career day invitation goes to Aldridge Development. Suggest the specific school." Career day was not a coincidence. Felicity identified the twins, identified their classroom, and arranged for Corbin to walk into a confrontation she designed from the ground up. She wanted him shattered, destabilized, and she wanted to be the only person close enough to hold him together. On her terms, inside her control. Delia photographed every page. Her hands trembled, and she let them, because steadiness would come later. She knew the cost. Career, certainly. Safety, possibly. But she kept photographing, because she could hear Felicity's voice from that morning. Cold and dismissive. Stand there and be useful. She was going to be useful. On her own terms. She finished, replaced every document, returned the folder to its exact position. Then, she contacted Corbin through a channel Felicity didn't monitor. A personal email address she had noted months ago while organizing his correspondence. Armed with Delia's evidence, Corbin returned to the penthouse that evening. Felicity was in the living room reviewing vendor contracts, wine untouched beside her. Something in his posture, rolled sleeves, no jacket, no cufflink adjustment, made her expression flicker. He laid the documents on the table, one by one. Surveillance reports, school enrollment records, the handwritten note, the demolition acceleration request, the fabricated safety concerns, each page placed precisely. Except this time, he was not building something. He was taking it apart. Felicity tried to reframe. Protection, brand management, doing what needed to be done. Same polished logic, same pivot from accused to indispensable. But the documents said what they said. "You didn't protect anything," Corbin said. "Level. Quiet. The dangerous kind of quiet. You engineered this. You put me in that classroom on purpose. You wanted me to see them, and then you wanted to use that moment to control me." Felicity's composure held for 3 seconds. Then something cracked, not into vulnerability, not into tears, but into a kind of honesty that was harder than both. Her voice dropped, and when she spoke, it carried something he had never heard from her before. Exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who had been performing for so long that the mask and the face had fused together. I knew from the beginning I could never win your love. I saw it the first night. The way you talked about her. The way you never talked about me like that. Not once. She paused. So I stopped trying to win your love and started making sure you'd need me instead. Need is stronger than love. Need doesn't leave. The confession sat between them like a blade on the table. You were never going to marry me for love. I knew that. So I made sure you'd marry me because you had no other choice. Her voice carried the flat clarity of someone who had stopped performing. She was the threat. I removed the threat. Corbin slid the engagement ring across the table. The same gesture he used 6 years ago. Something sliding across a surface towards someone he was trying to make disappear. But the geometry was reversed. This time, he was the one choosing to let go. The engagement is over. Felicity's eyes narrowed. Composure returned, colder, weaponized. She threatened press exposure, financial retaliation, board pressure. Everything she had collected deployed at once. Corbin didn't flinch. Do what you need to do. I'm done building things I don't believe in. The next morning, Yara arrived at the bakery before dawn. The twins in the back seat. Oren with his sketchbook, Maren quiet the way children are quiet when they sense the weather changing in their mother's face. Yara stepped out and saw it immediately. A notice taped to the front door. Official letterhead. Bold type. Demolition notice. Accelerated timeline. All tenants must vacate within 72 hours, not 15 days. 72 hours. Felicity's final move. Retaliation for the ring sliding across the table. If she could not have Corbin, she would make sure the last thing he tried to save was already gone. Yara read the notice. Her hand rose to the doorframe. The one she sanded and painted herself 3 years ago. The one that still carried a small drip mark in the corner where her brush slipped because Maren called from inside and she turned too quickly. She touched the wood, the way you touch something you might be saying goodbye to. She pulled the notice off the door before the twins could see it. Folded it. Put it in her apron pocket. Behind her, the car doors opened. Oren climbed out first, sketchbook to his chest. Maren followed, chin up, watching her mother with an attention that missed nothing. Yara unlocked the bakery, turned on the lights, walked into the kitchen, tied her apron tighter, and started the ovens. The pilot lights clicked and caught. Maren stood in the doorway between the counter and the kitchen. She had seen her mother pull something off the door. She had seen the way Yara's hands trembled. Just once, a single tremor before the steadiness returned. Maren walked to the corner table where Oren was settling in, sat beside him, and put her hand on his arm. 6 years old, and she already understood what it looks like when something you love is being threatened. She protected what she could, by staying close. If this was the last week, Yara was going to bake. 72 hours. If your stomach just dropped, hit that like button and hold on. The finale is coming, and I promise you, it is worth it. Corbin's phone. 5:47 a.m. Delia. She moved the timeline again. 72 hours. The notices went out this morning. Corbin was already standing, already pulling on shoes, reaching for keys, moving with an urgency that had nothing to do with quarterly projections or board meetings. For the first time in his life, the urgency was simple and human and real. 2 children with his eyes. A woman who never asked him for a single thing. 72 hours. This is the part of the story where Corbin Aldridge stops being the man his mother built and starts being the man Yara always saw hiding underneath the suit. But friends, seeing it and becoming it, those are 2 very different things. Last stretch. Hearth family. We left off with 72 hours on a demolition notice, and Yara turning on the ovens anyway. You've been with me through all of it. Drop where you're watching from one more time. Let's finish this together. Corbin called Delia from the car. She was already awake. Hadn't slept from the sound of her voice. Delia had come to him the night before, quietly, carefully, with photographs that could end Felicity's campaign and possibly her own career. She chose to come anyway. The surveillance folder photographs were backed up in 3 locations. Printed copies locked in a safety deposit box. Digital copies on a cloud server Felicity didn't know existed. 3 years of standing by the door, absorbing humiliation. And Delia had been paying attention the entire time. She knew where every file lived. She knew every password. She knew the architecture of Felicity's control, the way only someone invisible inside it could. By 7 that morning, Corbin sat in the office of an attorney who was not on Aldridge Development's payroll, had never met Felicity Greer, and had no connection to Vivian's network. Clean, independent. Delia sat beside him, printed photographs spread across the conference table. Every surveillance report, every correspondence chain, every handwritten instruction. The attorney reviewed the evidence. With each page, her expression shifted from professional neutrality to something sharper. Fabricated safety concerns, career day manipulation, months of surveillance on a private citizen and her children, abuse of corporate authority, fraud in the filing of expedited demolition permits. Felicity's greatest strength, her obsessive attention to detail, had become her greatest vulnerability. She documented her own manipulation, the way a surgeon keeps records of procedures. Delia photographed every page. The attorney filed an emergency injunction before noon, not just to halt the 72-hour notice, but to expose the fraudulent acceleration and freeze all permits on the Aldridge waterfront expansion pending full review. The filing named Felicity's attorney directly, cited the fabricated safety concerns, and attached the surveillance documentation. But Corbin didn't stop there. He did something his legal team warned him against, something his mother would have called professional suicide. He stepped down from the Aldridge waterfront expansion entirely, removed his name, forfeited his stake. Financial interest, development rights, authority over every parcel and permit he had signed for 18 months. The consequences were laid out in precise terms. Millions lost, reputation damaged, investor confidence shattered. Corbin listened to every word. Then he signed the documents. No cufflink adjustment, no armor, just his signature, the same one that once sat at the bottom of Yara's termination paperwork, now on a page that said he was walking away from everything he built. The injunction landed on Felicity's phone at 2 that afternoon. She read it standing in the penthouse living room, and for the first time since Corbin had known her, the composure didn't crack. It fell away entirely. Underneath was fear. She called her attorney. His response was clipped and final. The evidence was comprehensive, the filing airtight, and if it proceeded to a public hearing, the exposure would extend into fraud charges. Every email, every note, every instruction, documented, time-stamped, in the hands of a judge. She called Vivian next, expecting the alliance that held them together. But Vivian read the situation the way she read every situation, with cold clarity. She hadn't changed. She simply recalculated. A public scandal tied to Felicity would damage the Aldridge name far more than a quiet acknowledgement of Corbin's twins. Felicity was a liability. Liabilities get cut. Vivian severed the connection in a single phone call. Clean. Surgical. The same efficiency she taught Corbin. The same he used 6 years ago when he slid a check across the table. His mother's greatest tool, the cold precision she installed in him, was now being used to dismantle the woman she helped him choose. Felicity exited, not destroyed, but diminished. The power she held was always borrowed. Borrowed from Corbin's name, Vivian's network, the attorney's willingness to operate in shadows. The loan had been called. She packed 2 suitcases while Corbin was gone, left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter where the morning light would catch it, and walked out of a life she spent years engineering. She would land somewhere. Women like Felicity always landed. But she would land smaller, quieter, without the architecture of someone else's name to stand inside. The next morning, Corbin stood outside Flower and Fortitude, early. The bakery wasn't open yet, but the lights were on, and through the front window, he could see Yara's silhouette passing back and forth behind the kitchen window, already working, already baking. Because that's what Yara did when the world threatened to take something from her. She built, she baked, She kept the ovens running. He waited on the sidewalk. Did not knock. Did not enter. He waited until she saw him through the glass. And when she did, she stopped. They looked at each other through the window, and for a long moment neither moved. Then Yara walked to the front door, unlocked it, and stood in the frame. She didn't step aside. But after a pause long enough for Corbin to understand he was being evaluated one final time, she nodded. A single nod. Permission to cross the threshold, he told her. Injunction filed. Demolition frozen. Permits under review. His name removed. His stake forfeited. His authority surrendered. The bakery was safe. Not temporarily. Permanently. Yara listened behind the counter, apron dusted with flour, and she listened the way she always had. Fully, without interruption. When he finished, she didn't thank him. She asked one word. Why? Not why did you do it? Why now? After 6 years. After a check and 2 words. After a conference room and a life rebuilt from rubble. Why did you decide to become someone who shows up? Corbin didn't have a rehearsed answer. No boardroom speech. No prepared statement. He had the truth, and it was smaller and uglier than anything he had ever said in a meeting. Because I stood in that classroom and laughed at my own son's dream, and I heard myself, really heard myself, for the first time. I sounded exactly like the person I swore I'd never become. Yara's eyes filled. She did not let the tears fall. Her jaw loosened. Just slightly, just enough to notice. 6 years of walls releasing 1/fraction of a degree. She didn't forgive him. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through once. It's a road. And you're not even at the start of it yet. Then, quieter, but you showed up with the truth. That's more than I ever expected from you. That, right there, that's the moment. If this story made you feel something real, leave a comment. Tell me what this scene means to you. The twins were in the bakery. Saturday morning, no school. Oren sat at his corner table with his sketchbook open, colored pencils in a row, working with the focused intensity of a child who disappears into his art the way other children disappear into play. Maren sat across from him, watching the room with an attention that belonged to someone 3 times her age. She had seen her mother pull a notice off the door. She had seen the trembling. She had seen this man arrive twice now, and she watched her mother's face each time. The hardening, the holding, and this morning, the softening. 1/fraction of a degree. Something lived beside the suspicion now, something she didn't have a word for yet, something that felt dangerous because it required loosening her grip on the certainty that had protected her for 6 years, that their father was someone who left and would always be someone who left. Corbin didn't approach the twins. He stood near the counter, giving them distance, understanding perhaps for the first time that he was not owed their attention, not owed their affection, not owed anything except the right to prove, over time, that he was worth knowing. And that right had to be earned in their currency, not his. Oren stood up from the corner table, sketchbook in hand, and he started walking, not toward his mother, not toward his sister, toward the man who laughed at his dream. The bakery went still. Yara's hands froze on the counter. Corbin stopped breathing. Oren held out the sketchbook, open to a page. It was a cake, but not a child's random drawing. It was a blueprint, layers marked with measurements in crayon. 3 inches, this part holds the flowers, cream here. Structural notes in careful handwriting, letters uneven but deliberate. Color swatches in the margins. Frosting shades, each labeled. A fondant rose drawn from 3 angles so you could see exactly how to shape each petal, the way an architect draws a facade to capture the full geometry. Corbin, a man who spent his career reading architectural blueprints, who understood scale and structure the way other people understood weather, recognized what he was looking at, not a dream, a plan. His son didn't just want to bake cakes, he engineered them. The same instinct, the same builder's mind, in a 6-year-old's hand holding a crayon instead of a drafting pen. But the impulse was identical. Corbin crouched down, eye level. He looked at the page the way he would look at the most important rendering of his career, with genuine attention, with respect. "This is incredible. You're going to build something amazing." Oren's face, the same face that crumbled in the classroom, slowly reassembled into something new. Not a smile exactly, something deeper and more fragile. The expression of a child who has just been seen, fully and without judgment, by someone whose opinion he didn't know he craved until this moment. Then Oren flipped to the back of the sketchbook. The secret pages, the ones he pressed against his chest whenever anyone reached for the book. Page after page of the same face. Sharp features, strong jaw, drawn in pencil and crayon. And in every drawing, the same detail, empty circles where the eyes should be. No color, no blue. Just hollow spaces, waiting. Oren looked up at Corbin. Blue eyes steady. His mother's strength in his small frame, but something else too, entirely his own. A quiet bravery that said, "I drew you 100 times without knowing your face, and now you're here, and I need to know if you're real." Corbin's voice barely held. "Can I fill in the eyes?" Oren handed him a blue crayon. Corbin took it. Then he stopped. His hand hovered over the page. The hand that signed demolition orders, that wrote checks, that adjusted cufflinks as armor. It trembled, not from weakness, but from the terrifying weight of what this meant. Filling in those eyes meant becoming real, becoming someone this boy could point to and say, "That's him. That's my father." It meant there was no going back to project codes and empty penthouses and a life where he could pretend these children didn't exist. One crayon, one circle, and the man who ran from fatherhood 6 years ago would be choosing in front of his son to stay. He steadied his hand, and he filled in the empty circles, carefully, gently. Blue, his blue, their blue, pressed into the page by a hand that was learning for the first time what it felt like to build something that mattered more than money. After Corbin left, the bakery settled into its afternoon rhythm. Oren returned to his sketchbook, but the page was different now. The face in the back had eyes, blue ones, filled in by someone else's hand. He studied the drawing for a long time, and something in the way he held the book changed. Less like a shield, more like a bridge. Yara stood at her recipe binder, the one she kept on the shelf above the prep station, filled with years of recipes, notes, adjustments. She opened it to the back, where a folded piece of paper had lived for 6 years, tucked behind her grandmother's pound cake recipe. The first one she ever baked at 2 in the morning while her twins slept. The check. His check. Enough zeros to make a person disappear. She never deposited it. Never cashed it. Never spent a cent. She kept it the way some people keep scars. Not because they want the wound, but because the reminder serves a purpose. It reminded her, on the hardest days, who she refused to be. Her bakery, her children, her life. All of it. Built on her own terms, with her own hands. She looked at the check for a long time. Then she tore it in half, and in half again, and again, small pieces falling into the trash can beneath the prep station, landing on top of flour dust and parchment paper scraps. Not because she had forgiven him, because the reminder had served its purpose. She didn't need it anymore. She knew exactly who she was. She had always known. Corbin moved toward the door to leave. And that's when Maren spoke. 3 words. The last words spoken in this bakery before the story closes. Delivered with her mother's fierce clarity and something beneath it. A weight that should not belong to a child but did, because this child watched her mother read a demolition notice and still turn on the ovens. Watched. Her mother's hands tremble and then steady. Learned before she could read that love meant showing up and staying, and that most people failed at both. Don't hurt him. Not a request, a warning. A condition of entry delivered by the gatekeeper of a family that survived without him, and would survive without him again if necessary. But beneath the steel lived something new, the weight of a girl who was, against her own better judgment, considering the possibility that this man might be different from the story she had written about him in her head. Not trusting, not accepting, considering. From Maren, that was more than most people ever got. Corbin met her eyes, His blue, her blue, the same color across 6 years and 1,000 mistakes. I won't. Maren held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then she turned back to her brother. A probationary agreement, provisional, revocable at any time. But it was open. The door was open. Corbin Aldridge didn't become a good man that day. Goodness isn't a light switch. It's a building, and he was just pouring the foundation. But he did something most people never do. He looked at the life someone else designed for him and said, "This is not mine." He looked at the damage he caused and said, "This is mine." Those are 2 different kinds of courage, and most people never find either one. Yara didn't need him to save her. She saved herself a long time ago, in a clinic parking lot, in a cramped studio, in a thrift store cookbook, in a kitchen at 2 in the morning. What she needed, what those children needed, was for him to show up, tell the truth, and stay. Not once, every day, for the rest of his life. The truth has finally come home, and it walked in through a bakery door, carrying nothing but itself. Remember that. A child's dream is sacred ground. Don't you ever walk on it with dirty shoes. If this story stayed with you, and I feel in my heart that it did, here's what I need from you. Hit that like button, not for the algorithm, for Yara, for Oren and his blue crayon, for every person who built something beautiful out of nothing and refused to let anyone tear it down. Subscribe if you haven't already. We are building something special at this hearth, and I want you right here with us for every story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. You know who they are. And leave me a comment. I read every single one. Tell me, what would you have done in Corbin's shoes? And if you've got a dream somebody once laughed at, tell me that too. I want to hear it. Until next time, friends, stay close to the hearth. I'll keep the fire going.